This is the story of Olivia and James, a couple who had built a life together, only to watch it crumble under the weight of careless words. It's a story of love, regret, and the fragile threads that hold relationships together. But most of all, it's a story about how one moment, one sentence can change everything. Olivia and James had been married for nearly a decade. To the outside world, they were the picture of stability. They lived in a modest house in the quiet town of Willowbrook, where the streets were lined with oak trees and the neighbors waved hello without really knowing each other. Olivia worked as a librarian, her days filled with the scent of old books and the quiet hum of turning pages. James was a contractor, his hands calloused from years of building and fixing things. They were the kind of couple who seemed to have it all figured out. Until you look closer. Behind closed doors, their marriage was a patchwork of unresolved arguments and unspoken resentments. They weren't unhappy, not exactly, but they weren't happy either. Their fights were small but frequent, like little earthquakes that shook the foundation of their relationship. They bickered over dishes left in the sink, over whose turn it was to take out the trash, over the way James snored too loudly at night. None of it seemed like a big deal at the time. But over the years, those little cracks began to widen. James had always been the kind of man who carried himself with quiet confidence. He was tall and broad-shouldered, with a deep voice that commanded attention. But beneath that exterior was a vulnerability he had spent his entire life trying to hide. When he was a teenager, a cruel rumor had spread about him, a locker room joke that had spiraled out of control. It wasn't true, but the damage was done. The girl he had a crush on at the time had laughed along with the others, and the memory of that humiliation had stayed with him ever since. He had buried it deep, convincing himself that it didn't matter. But it did. Olivia had no idea. She had never seen that side of him. To her, James was strong, unshakable. She had never imagined that he could be hurt by something as simple as words. And so, on that fateful night, when their latest argument had escalated into a shouting match, she said the one thing she never should have said. It started like any other fight. James had come home late, his boots tracking mud across the freshly cleaned floor. Olivia had snapped at him, and he had snapped back. The argument spiraled, each of them throwing barbs at the other, until Olivia, desperate to win, said the words that would change everything. Asterisk, you argue a lot to be a man. No wonder you're so tiny down there. Asterisk, the moment the words left her mouth, she regretted them. But it was too late. James didn't yell. He didn't argue back. He just stood there, his face pale, his hands clenched at his sides. And then, without a word, he turned and walked away. Olivia waited for him to come back, to yell, to fight. But he didn't. That night, he slept in the guest room, and the next night, and the night after that. Days turned into weeks, and still, James barely spoke to her. He avoided her at every turn, his eyes distant, his voice cold. Olivia tried everything to fix it, apologies, gestures, even begging. But nothing worked. One evening, she found him packing a suitcase. Her heart sank as she realized what was happening. "Are you really leaving?" she asked, her voice trembling. James didn't look at her right away. When he finally spoke, his voice was quiet but firm. "I don't know if I can get past this." Olivia broke down, tears streaming down her face. "I love you," she said, her voice cracking. "I messed up. I would take it back if I could. Just tell me what to do." For a long moment, James was silent. Then, finally, he said, "You can't take back what you said, and I can't unhear it. But maybe I don't want to walk away. Not yet." It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't a promise. But it was something. And for Olivia, that was enough to hold on to. The road to healing would be long and uncertain. Some wounds, once opened, never fully close. But as Olivia stood there, watching James zip up the suitcase and set it aside, she realized that love, no matter how fragile, was worth fighting for, even when the weight of words threatened to crush it. So, what do you think? Can a marriage survive something like this? Let us know in the comments below. And as always, thanks for listening. Until next time,